Welcome back to 7th Grade Mustache. On today's episode, we'll be speaking about MENTACIDE. You have all heard the story about how political parties keep their name but change their motto. Before the Civil Rights Movement, the Democrats were more conservative like Republicans, and vice versa. The same flip has happened again. Yet there are a large group of people that don't flinch when they can clearly see that these pro wrestling theatrics are a total fabrication.
The illusion of choice is the only thing that they offer you.
MENTACIDE occurs when you willingly think and act out of someone else's interpretation of reality to their benefit and against our own survival. The term MENTACIDE was coined by one J.A. Mearlou in an article that was published February 8th, 1951 in the American Journal of Psychiatry. Mearlou's experiences in World War II, both in occupied Holland and in London, gave further impetus to his thinking about military conflict and the psyche. His wartime essays were brought together in book form titled Total War and the Human Mind. As understanding of the human mind has grown, we have come to realize that the same human mind can be kneaded like putty or dough in the hands of unscrupulous inquisitors. Such psychological intervention, when it is part of a tyrannical system, can be called MENTACIDE. The Nazis have used it to turn resistance fighters into collaborators. The communists had used it to break Cardinal Mindszenty of the Hungarian Catholic Church. There is also the social MENTACIDE of propaganda, suggestion, and mass hypnotism. These are areas in which Joseph Goebbels was very well versed. Both individual and social MENTACIDE are difficult to resist. Training in auto-hypnosis might help, and this was a technique that was employed by Mearlou when he was interrogated by the Germans. Being psychoanalyzed could also arm people against MENTACIDE. But like auto-hypnosis, it was impractical for the vast majority of people at the time.
We get involved with conflicts that we're not supposed to get involved in. We pick a clear good guy. We jump on that side of the good guy. World War II, World War I. But then you got this conflict in Israel and Palestine where like, damn, the good guy is a little guy who doesn't align with our interests. And so we fuck with Palestine because Palestine has infiltrated our government and our society so much. Assuming we side with Israel, pardon me, because they're so embedded and entrenched in our government. And you see this ain't right. And then when you have these poor students who speak up, literally, they'll be kicked out of school if they keep protesting. They're allowed to protest. That's what a protest is. I don't need your permission to protest. And I think that's one of the biggest things that also affect black folks is that we want to protest a certain way. I'm like, nah, you don't need permission to protest, especially if it's valid. Now, a lot of times you got people protesting over dumb shit, and it's a tough one. But that's what this MENTACIDE is so deep, is the fact that you see this don't make sense. This doesn't benefit you. Black folks have gone through this with years. It don't benefit you, but you still align yourself, or you align yourself with who benefited you 30, 40 years ago, but you haven't updated your rules or your views. And
so, although we now live in a time where meditation has become commonplace in much of the modern world, this can actually be a bulwark against mental manipulation. In feudal Japan, it was part of basic training in schools of ninjutsu to harden the mind against hypnosis. So it's a way of basically training your mind to fight and defend itself against suggestion or mental repression. But Mearlou made an explicit connection between MENTACIDE and Pavlovian conditioning.
Yes, very good. That's deep.
In his book, The Crime of MENTACIDE, he says, after the resistance of the victim is broken, the second phase of individual MENTACIDE consists of making him accept his confession as his own, much as an animal is conditioned to perform tricks. Pavlov would take center stage in the brainwashing discourse in the 1950s, symbolizing the mechanical, repetitive, mindless, inhuman character of the process and the robot-like human beings it creates, which are servile mechanical instruments.
So you must understand what Pavlov did. Pavlov, he was the guy that experimented on dogs. So he puts a contraption on his dog to monitor its saliva. So he's collecting saliva. So what happens is at the same time every day he gives his dog a treat, or at the end of an activity he gives the dog a treat, and the dog begins to salivate. What happens is you can remove the stimulus, but you can still you can remove the food, but you still have all the other stimulus. And the dog will start to salivate because it becomes mechanical. It becomes something that's repetitive. So even though the stimulus is gone, even though the food is gone, the dog still has the same behavior and auto function. Means that he's salivating even though the food's not there. It's just the fact that activity was still there. And that's what's happening to us is that we expect a reward at the end of this activity, and that's why we give blind loyalty to these different organizations or movements or whatever, and you give that blind loyalty as if to say is steadfastness. What it is actually brainwashing. What it is that auto response that Pavlov created, and that's what's happening. Like I said, it's important to be steadfast in a situation. Now we saw a lot of stuff with King. King lost several of those marches. I mean, they were beaten bad. Like the one in Cicero, Illinois, beat the shit out the niggas, but they kept going because there was a goal that they were working on. I'm not going to be hitting the head too many times. I'm not that. I'm
from the Malcolm X school of self-determination. But listen, in his testimony as an expert witness in 1954 in the case against Colonel Frank Schwabel, one of the American pilots who had been captured by the Chinese and confessed to germ warfare, the court should not hold Schwabel responsible for his actions, is what Mirlu argued. Any man, including the member of the court, could be made to confess if subjected to this kind of torture. Menticide can turn anyone into a mechanical imitator of his tormentors.
Okay, the big one was, remember when they robbed the bank? Remember Richard Pryor was talking about the white girl that helped the Black Panthers? I can't think of her name right now.
Yeah, it wasn't the Black Panthers. It was a Symbionese revolutionary movement. Her name was Patty Hearst. She was this wealthy white chick that belonged to the Hearst publishing family. She was part of the family of the guy that they made the movie Citizen Kane about.
Yeah, and they paid to get her back. They paid the ransom to get her back, and they was like, but we have you on tape robbing the bank with a machine gun. Again, you can be brainwashed. Again,
I'll give you a personal example. I know somebody very well, and I've known them for a very long time. And this woman went and married a guy, and she began to mirror this guy's personality, and the guy is a complete asshole. Now, before she married this person, she was sweet, funny, humorous, generous person, and then she married this guy, and she mirrored his asshole personality. It's crazy how people will do that. And I'll give you another example. You can be in a relationship with somebody and you can start mirroring their habits or the things that they do. So you have to be careful not to let so much influence creep into your own psyche. Think things as your sleep patterns. Your sleep patterns can be affected.
Well, hold up. Your sleep patterns can also influence your behavior, exhaustion, stuff like that. But
absolutely tied together, yes.
Yeah, but the bottom line is you have an identity, and it's so hard to maintain your identity in this day and age.
Woo!
If you're in a relationship, you know the term. I'll tell you, there's relationship duct tape and there's single duct tape. Now, don't get me wrong, single duct tape it didn't always have the best behavior, but I matured. So there's some different behaviors when you're in a committed relationship. So, but at the same time, you should not give up your identity. My mom was like, don't get henpecked. If somebody argues with you, you argue back. Don't sit. And so you have to find the balance between, okay, is this a real point that's worth, arguing, or is this something that we can discuss civilly? That's what happens. You will lose your personality and your identity being in a relationship because you don't want to argue. But that's the exact same behavior that these people do when they're being tortured. They're being tortured over and over, and they're like, "Fuck it, I don't care about reality." How many of these guys have confessed to a crime because of 13, 14 hours of interrogation. That's so. At what point are you trying to make this guy conform to the evidence, or at what point are you?
That's not interrogation. That's rendition.
But that's the problem. The police sometimes can't tell the difference. Because it's because they're in a situation where, for whatever reason, their evidence says this to them, and so they're going in this direction. But then you got a guy who's slow, a guy who's scared, or you got somebody who's just tired, and they'll admit to this shit. Then later on, they renege. So, are you reneging? Like, I'm not reneging. And so, what you got to understand is, if I just work 16 hours and you put me in a small room and you say I did, I'm like, I didn't do it. At some point in time, I'm just exhausted. Like, fuck it. And so, this is what we're dealing with.
But that's where the auto hypnosis, the ninjutsu mind training comes in. So, in his dystopian magnum opus, The Rape of the Mind, Myrlu argues that our love of the mechanical and of modern technology was breeding a society of robots. The viewer, he suggested, might become glued to the television with no will of their own and no individuality. So I want to stop right there for a second. So there have been times where I have watched television and I have heard a message. I was watching this TV show. It was called South Central, and this was in the 90s.
Yep.
Laying on the couch, and I wasn't really paying attention. And I heard this warped sounding voice that sounded like it was passed through a filter. And it said, listen to the voice on the screen. I was in my basement by myself.
Heard it clear as fuck. I wasn't smoking no weed or nothing. I was 100% stone sober. And I hear this. And y'all, my hearing is really good. Really good. I can hear a mile away, okay? And I heard this and I knew it was an artificial voice. Now, the thing about television watching is you have to keep it to a minimum. Because as a person that is energy aware like I have, I begin to notice energy drainage when I start to watch TV beyond a certain point. But that's because certain frequencies, they're sneaking certain frequencies in.
No. Not even that. It's that my energy is not being used effectively.
Well, okay, I got you.
So then that becomes an issue of self-discipline. So then after watching a 45-minute show, I need to get up and go do something. Or if it's a movie, then I'll sit there for 2 hours and I'll watch a movie. But I can't sit there and binge again and again, 5 hours of stuff, because you get this nasty, greasy feeling like if you're just masturbating days in a row and not having any actual sex, and it's like, yo, I am just throwing this energy away. This is not good.
See, me and you grew up with TV, so a lot of times we would do homework with the TV on. Like, we would zone in and out of the program. Or we would like clean the house, or we would like work on a project. I would literally be building something in front of the TV, but then I got to zone out to focus on what I'm doing, that kind of shit.
See, okay, hold on. See, that's actually a good way to watch TV, and here's why. Because when my early martial art, so Bruce Lee, in his books on Jeet Kune Do, he would write about how while he was watching television, he would work out. So he would do crunches while he's watching TV, or he would do like push-ups while he's watching TV. Something to keep the energy flowing while he's there watching television.
It breaks the monotony, but it doesn't devote yourself to that. You're not giving yourself over to that thing.
Because we're talking about MENTACIDE in this episode, I want people to understand that we're not looking to be the victim. We're saying that there are institutions that seek to victimize us. Now, you can't let it end right there. Like, oh, these motherfuckers are trying to kill us. They're brainwashing us. We're cattle.
Yeah.
No, you can't stop there. You have to build up your defenses and be proactive. Go ahead, man. What are you going to say?
Look. This, you got to give me 7 minutes on this one. So, do you remember? It's been almost 10 years. It's me, you, and your brother. Your brother was in town. You were in town clearly, but your brother was in town, and it had to be around '08. I'm lying. It's like around '08. And there was this big thing where your brother was explaining how it was in his industry, and I was about to say something. He said, "Don't interrupt him." I'm like, "No." I was trying to tell him it's like this in every industry. At the time, there were a bunch of people had got fired or laid off or furloughed in my company, but the same thing happened at your brother's company, and they hired all these temporary people, these temp service that were doing jobs that normally paid 25, $30 an hour. They're doing it for, you know what I'm saying, like 14, 15, yeah. Um, and so what it hit me right away was they're doing this in every industry. Like my job, they furloughed a bunch of people. Now, because we're a union, they couldn't hire those temp people. They used to call it Sally temp or Sally services. So back in the 80s, they did that, where they furloughed a bunch of railroad workers, or they furloughed a bunch of union people, but then they brought in these temp services. Well, they call them scabs, but because the union's so strong, they got fined for that. Same thing. I'm gonna give you an example. My mom used to go on strike all the time, and some people would cross the picket line. The union would sue them for that money back. Like whatever money you made for crossing the picket line, they would sue them. But I digress. Let me get back to the point. So the point was that what your brother was experiencing in his industry, I was experiencing in my industry. Everybody thinks what they're experiencing is an individual experience when it's actually is nationwide. Now let's bring it back to right now. So one of the things happening at my job is they keep introducing new technology that's not ready. It's not working. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because people get written up. Here's the crazy part. So if I make a mistake, I get written up, right? But if that technology makes a mistake, the person who programmed it, they don't get in trouble, do they? I think that's kind of odd, because what happens is they'll try to write me up for the mistake the computer makes. Now, if I could defend myself, they're like, "Oh, we'll tear this up." But the point I'm making, so I went to get my something done with my car. So I went to the DMV, and I had to go in the back, and literally I'm on one side getting this paperwork done. Then I walked to the other side. It's like 78 people in the DMV, but they were getting to the people very quickly. I went to the back with one of the managers to help me, register my vehicle, whatever I was doing, and she described like, yeah, the new system ain't working. I'm like, wait a minute. That's the exact. So I heard it that there, where this new system ain't working and the manpower is having to catch up. And I heard it someplace else. So the reason I'm bringing this up is I think this is how they're going to implement AI. They're going to have a bunch of systems, computer systems. Yes.
To introduce a solution.
Yes. So
that's the Hegelian dialect.
But you spot the shit right away. If this is happening in every industry. Second, the other thing that's going to speed it along is that you got three companies running all of America. You got BlackRock, Vanguard. I can't think of the third one right now. Please forgive me. I'm stupid. But if you got all these three companies who own all the other companies, you see they're killing off Subway. That's why people are laughing. Like, hey, remember the Running Man? Taco Bell is going to be the only restaurant left. People are laughing. No, that's not funny. You have all these sub shops that are being bought. They just bought. What's the one sub? The last one left is Jersey Mike's. And Vanguard is trying to buy Jersey Mike's for $8 billion. I think it's Vanguard. Please forgive me if I'm wrong. Vanguard BlackRock is trying to buy it for $8 billion. So why are they doing that? They're buying it up, selling off the real estate to their people, but they're killing America in the process. Also, they're ushering in the need for AI because, well, nobody wants to work these jobs. And this is how these nerds hit you with it. They're like, AI will just simply do menial, repetitive jobs. Every job is menial and repetitive. That's the part of the society. And then you have open borders, which we just talked about off the air that Slim had went for. So now you got people coming over here, making money, bringing it back to their country. You got people in Canada who have a fucking socialist communist president. So what I'm saying is that to implement AI, this is what's going to happen. They're going to have a bunch of failures in the process, and they're going to blame them on people when they're their systems problems. The system is not functioning properly. But if I blame people, then that's going to make it easier for me to implement.
What you do is you give the people the lemon first.
Yes.
You give them the lemon and like, man, this car's a piece of shit. And then you hand them the top of the line car with all the bells and whistles. I'm like, oh, you gave us such a wonderful solution. Yeah, the problem is that they beta test everything on the public. There was a time, people have to remember this. people in their 30s can remember this, when they didn't beta test in the public. You had to beta test. You had to actually volunteer to beta test programs and products, and then it would be part of this peer group that would decide if it was going to be sent out.
If it worked.
Now, what they're doing is they're beta testing everything in the public.
Live. They just give it to you. That's deep, man. Because they do that shit at my job. As big as my job is, you would think that they would have a beta group, like you said, like a test system where they try this shit out. They tried everything and get all the bugs out of it. Then they implement it. Nope. They give you an implementation date and they just roll it out. And if it works, great. If it don't work, we'll roll it back and we'll change those. What? That's counterproductive. You know, how many mistakes are out there, or how many accounts are getting screwed over because of that? Look, like I said, I think that this is a very deep subject, bro. And I think that the reason I'm saying that these are related is because right now we're brainwashed to believing that the best thing out there is AI and AI
electric cars.
Yes, and it goes against our interests. That's what makes it. That's what makes Roscoe is so profound for bringing this up, because everybody's talking about electric cars. Hydrogen cars are better. Water cars are better. And then they tell you, they don't work. So here's what you need to understand.
So why did they kill the guy that created a car that runs on water if it didn't work?
Well, no, stop that. How many times have they killed the guy? Because it's the same story every single time. The brother up there in Buffalo, he had a car that ran on water. He killed him. The guy that had the car in the 80s drove all the way from...
There's a guy in the Philippines that had a car that ran on water.
Look, so the fact that, hey, what about the guy who invented diesel? He was thrown in the English Channel during the World's Fair because diesel was designed to run on vegetable oil and shit like that. Vegetable oil was not meant to be consumed. It was meant to run engines. But y'all didn't hear me though. So what I'm saying is that's what makes this, what you call menticide, is so
menticide.
Menticide. I said it wrong. That's what makes this menticide so crazy, where you're literally so brainwashed that you look, if you suck enough capitalist dick, you're gonna spit out the wrong shit. I get that, but that's at any job. If you kiss enough ass, you're gonna eat shit at some point. You gotta realize that that's what they're breaking you down. And the idea that here's another thing. I had an argument with somebody at work, not a bad one, but so these two guys. I got a young Asian guy and an older white guy who are arguing back and forth about Tesla. And so the young Asian guy, Tesla's so great, this, that, and other. I said, but you do realize, I had to explain to the older white guy, the reason Tesla is successful is not because he has a good product. He said, what do you mean? I said, first of all, he bought that product from somebody. You realize that car existed. There's Chad and somebody else. I can't remember their two names. Those guys invented Tesla. And then, the funny Elon guy buys it. But he buys it with his money from the PayPal mafia. So again, that is a CIA front, but that's a whole other conversation. I said, you do realize, because they have zero emissions, that they get these tokens that are worth $2 and $3 billion a piece. He's like, what do you mean? I said, these are tokens. So since you have zero emissions, you get these tokens. Well, Stellantis, which is Chrysler, they're still making V8 cars and people are loving them, but they're doing well, but they get penalized for it. So they have to buy these tokens for billions.
Of trading these tokens.
Yes.
On exchange. So then now people who are driven by profit will see this as another impetus or motivator to make them want to play that game of carbon credits.
Yeah, and so they buy the carbon credits, 1 or 2 billion. Now all of a sudden they can still produce their cars because they bought the credits from Tesla. That's how Tesla is staying in business. He's not staying in business because of his great sales. He's staying in business because he's being given these carbon green tokens that he can sell to other companies. So that right there is. So you think this is just he improved the electric car so much? No. Not at all. Is that he's playing that game that's behind the scenes. And so you got Rivian coming out now. That's that truck company. Ford tried to make the Ford Lightning. It kind of was a flop. I think it's a good truck. I think it just people just don't trust them. These Teslas are blowing up. You know, when they get in accidents, they blow up. That one guy, you sent me the article, which I sent you before, where the guy said my Tesla. There's a Tesla that crashed into my front lawn, into the front of my house. Excuse me. And there was a tow truck with there in 15 minutes. He said, we had not called the tow truck yet. We were still stunned, but it sends a signal. When that car wrecks, they send a signal and somebody comes gets it. And he's like, hey, no, leave it for the police. They're like, no. And he argued with the tow truck driver. The tow truck driver moved the car off his property without his permission. Now, that's on him, because I had a similar situation once where they were trying to repo my truck. And you know this to be true. So I had that truck for years. And one time I missed a couple payments. And I get off work and I see this tow truck driver drive through my alley. I'm like, I wonder if he's here for me. Then eventually he backs up in my driveway. He's like, hey, bro, I got to repossess your truck. I said, oh, man, please don't, man. I really need my truck to get to work. He's like, I'll lose my job. I said, I don't want you losing your job, but motherfucker, you trespassing. Now, you're in my driveway. Now, if you catch me on the street, cool. But if you pull in my driveway, I got something for your ass. And so he left. Because I said, you're trespassing. If you're going to get my truck, great, but you're not going to pull up in my driveway on my property and take my truck, because you're risking your life. So I hid the truck at my mama's house until I made the payment. But I digress. That's the shit we're talking about, is that you're being so brainwashed that you don't know who's on your side. People, yes, he's a nice billionaire. Elon Musk this, Elon Musk that, but he's not that nice. And he's trying to do to us what China's trying to do to us, but he's trying to do it on our side, as if, yeah, China's trying to do it, but if I do it, it's not as bad.
He was quoted as saying he wanted to make Twitter the everything app. He wanted to make Twitter the American version of WeChat.
So okay. So everybody needs to go back to 1997. So Elon Musk, like I said, he made his money with PayPal. So he tried to create an online thing called X. He said X is going to be the online banking, that you can do everything you need from X, this, that, and other. And people thought he left that idea alone. He can't. You got to remember, he's autistic. He can't leave anything alone. And so guess what? When he bought Twitter for all those billions of dollars, what did he change the name to? X. He wants to revive that idea from 97, 98, or 99. And that's why Twitter is called X now. He wants it to be all-encompassing. So he thought that he would buy Twitter, which was already existing, and implement it and turn it into that, where Twitter is your bank account, Twitter is your social media, Twitter is your how do I find you? And so he's trying to do that. Now, then he's going to sell it to the CIA or let the CIA in on it. That's the whole thing. When you realize Jeff Bezos had a $600 million contract to do the cloud sharing and the cloud storage for the CIA, then you realize all those guys that had made their money on the PayPal, when PayPal went public, those guys made a shitload of money. Those are our new billionaires now. That's Elon. That's Bezos. There's another one or two guys that made a shitload of money. And that's how the CIA funds these guys. They do something in the public that makes a shitload of money. Then all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's how you got it. But we all know Elon has ties to South Africa and diamonds and his crazy ass dad and his crazy grandfather. That whole idea, like, I have nothing to do with them. You're full of shit. Your dad just married your stepsister. But
all right. So the machines that we created to serve us threaten to become our masters.
Our masters.
In fact, totalitarianism is nothing more than dominance of technology in this mechanization of our lives and our mind. Russia has already succumbed to mentacidal forces, and we're threatening our society too. Young people must be taught responsibility and a basic level of awareness to internalize in preparation for their adult duties and examining the mental and physical conditions that are essential to their independent empowerment. The fall of dynasties, the Bolshevik Revolution, World Wars I and II, saw the destruction of old alliances and boundaries. The convulsions in religion, morals, family life, economic, and political conduct, decadence in music and art can all be traced back to mass indoctrination, or mass brainwashing practiced by the Tavistock Institute Social Science Engineering Organization. Prominent among Tavistock's faculty were Edward Bernays, the nephew of Sigmund Freud. That brings us to menticide in entertainment. The Tavistock Institute in Sussex, England, was originally part of Wellington House before World War I, and it morphed and changed into what became the Tavistock Institute in 1947 as a non-profit charity that applies social science to contemporary issues and problems. Yet it has been named a culprit for mass brainwashing and social engineering activities. The music group The Beatles were backed by individuals working for the Tavistock Institute. Barely subliminal, but increasingly open incitement to violence, unrestrained sex, anarchism, and Satanism. These are found in abundance among the songs owned and published and distributed by Time Warner. Most recently, Time Warner was bought by Discovery. So now Discovery and Time Warner are one. Now, but you have to understand, if you buy Time Warner, what that is. What is under that umbrella? Time Warner controls 80% of the media. Warner Brothers, there's museums, there's movie studios in Burbank and Leavesden, England. There's international dubbing and subtitling. There's digital networks, 150. Sports and entertainment digital network. There's podcast networks. There's food.com. Discovery Digital Studios. There's Warner Brothers Theater Ventures, where they own... Okay, so there are movie theaters that go by different names that you know them by, but they fall under the umbrella of Warner Brothers and now Discovery. DC Studios, comic books, and movies, and television. Castle Rock Entertainment, they make movies, they make TV shows. Spyglass Media, you've seen that logo header at the beginning of movies. There's distribution that is international in France, Germany, Italy, Spain, the UK, Ireland, Japan, South Korea, Argentina, Brazil, Mexico. I'm going on and on and on. Cartoon Network. There's all these different things that fall under Warner Brothers. So then, if you have a message or types of messages that you want to distribute, you have 80% of the media at your disposal that you can utilize whenever you want to send whatever type of message that you want. Now, you may have to disguise it and use subversion, but you have all these channels.
You have access to a lot of people, and that's where the Pavlov's dog in the classic conditioning comes in.
HBO, CNN, TNT Sports,
Max. So the thing is that this message can be given. So here, this is how they confuse you. It's one thing to get when you watch HBO to get a message. It's another thing to watch another channel and get a message. But when you're watching 15 channels and you get the same message, it must be true. It wears you down. Like I said, when you watch HBO, you expect to see a few, more risque things and more adult.
No. What you don't understand is that HBO inserts these risque things on purpose. There was a show called Treme about the black people that lived in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina and what life was like after Hurricane Katrina. This show was a straightforward story. But I was dating this school teacher at the time, and she brought up this point that there was a sex scene between these kids in an abandoned house, and she's like, "Why is this in this? Why is this in the show?" She's like, "This didn't add anything to the story at all. They had to put this in there because HBO, they love sexual deviancy. They put it in everything they do. It can be a jail show called Oz. You got weird gay sex in Oz. They'll put it in every show. It's in The Wire. Every show, there's always some weird sexual kink or some sexual deviancy. It's always in there.
Look, you can make the excuse for Oz, but what about this new rapper that has that show on HBO Cinemax, the little black dude?
Dude, and why is the Rodney Carmichael show even a show? This thing that is on, and like it's showing how his parents don't approve of his lifestyle. A lot of this shit we don't need to see and don't care about. And then you see this guy, you know what I'm saying, who's this rich, wealthy celebrity, basically embarrassing himself on these dating websites. And I'm like, yo, there's a whole dating website for celebrities. But you want to go and mess with these people. So basically, you want to create this messy-ass situation that becomes a reality TV show. Got it. Okay.
Look, he starts out as a rapper. Next thing you know, he's fucking an old white dude. Look, what I'm saying is that's entertainment. I dig it. But for some odd reason, that people take that shit way more serious than they should.
Another thing they like to do is HBO likes to emasculate black men every chance they get in their content.
Look, how about this? HBO, we had this talk before. HBO does the same show every 3 years. First, remember the show was First and 10 with it had OJ on it. It was a football show.
Yeah, 1987.
Then every 3 years they have another football show. And then and the last one, remember they had Arliss. Then they had Ballers, which is Rock being Arliss, and then he's the representation for these football players and shit like that. The one show they had was so realistic that the NFL said we will not support you. Pull that show, and that was the one where all these players had the discretionary fund, and they were paying for abortions, and they were hiding children and shit. And they were all using steroids, but they just knew when to juice. Yeah, that show got taken off. In fact, that show was on ESPN. Started reporting on the show like, "Hey, who do you think they're representing?" And the NFL said, "Now cut that shit the fuck out." So, yes, HBO does the same shit over and over. Look here? This is still about, as my brother said, MENTACIDE. I want to say it correctly. This is still about people who are supporting things that don't benefit them. I get it that sometimes these shows are entertaining and they should be for rated R or whatever, but the fact of the matter is some of these messages should not be introduced to children as soon as they are.
Listen, man, like 2 years ago, Sexy Red went and performed at a high school. This music, this is risque ass music that little girls and boys should not be exposed to unless they do it on their own. If you going off and you listen to this stuff on your own, I get it, man. You know what I'm saying? Like we would go and we would listen to like all kind of crazy shit.
NWA, Richard Pryor, yeah,
and 2 Live Crew and all that bullshit. But this is the deal: there were no teachers that were bringing these musicians to the school. That shit was correct. That we shot down so fast by the school board. That means that cleared the school board. So everybody at the school board was like, all right, cool. Sexy Red with all her nasty ass music.
Hold it. You said 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, she wasn't out. We wouldn't have known who she was. You would have just thought she was some young female rapper.
No. They listen to the music first. These are teachers. They teach people how to study. So they know they have to do their homework themselves. So you got to understand.
People are half-assed now.
No. This is an agenda. This was run through. This is railroaded through. They ran this through, and it was cleared that this nasty-ass, talentless hack went and performed in front of school kids. It's in your name, sexy. So you promoting sex in your name. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't these eugenicists trying to keep population down? Don't you want black people to procreate less? Don't you want fewer in this age of everything being correct and politically correct and shit, don't you want fewer teenage mothers with fatherless children? Then why would you send this promiscuous musician to perform at their school?
No, listen to what you're saying. She is singing about unsuccessful relationships, unsuccessful parenting. Yeah, you want that because, like I said, when people think about black kids, they're unsuccessful. Singer even said black and brown children are a blight on society. So yeah, you want that to be the case.
Margaret Sanger.
Margaret Sanger, yeah. You want that to be the case. So all this does is a self-fulfilling prophecy. But when we know the numbers actually don't represent that.
Okay, but watch this, though. Margaret Sanger said that there has to be something done about the Negro problem. So this is clearly spoken and said with the intent of racism and eugenics behind those words.
What organization did Margaret Sanger create?
Planned Parenthood. So then why are all of these buildings only in black and brown neighborhoods? There is no Planned Parenthood in nice white neighborhoods.
Barack gave all that money to Planned Parenthood. I'm like, y'all do realize that they killed black folks. That was, and then they said, well, that's a long time ago. I said, it's the same organization. Oh, and this was what was so important about Steve Coakley. Remember, Steve Coakley was into the mission statements of these companies. And because of Steve Coakley, some of these mission statements got changed. United Way did not have the same mission statement in 1991 and 92 that it has now, because people like Steve Coakley, this is their mission statement. And so, black folks ain't used to white folks telling us the truth. So when you read that mission statement, it tells you what their original goal was. And that's how Planned Parenthood was. They changed that mission statement for birth rights. That's what the terms they use now. But no, we know that they said black and brown babies had to be done about them. So I was just simply saying that I saw that building recently in Council Bluffs. That's all I was saying. Let's get back to the idea that this is menticide at its finest, where you have people championing Planned Parenthood when Planned Parenthood clearly goes against their best interest. This is what we're talking about. This is a prime example. You got black folks and black women arguing for Planned Parenthood. It's a good thing. You need to make sure they're properly funded. No, we don't. It's not a good thing. In their history, it was to get rid of us, literally stop our birth rate, and that's.
See, but they have taken something that was meant to get rid of people, and they're defending it like this is the solution. The solution is not to make these people sterile. The solution is to give these young people greater opportunities of self-empowerment. I told you what I saw when I went to the library, when I came and we recorded an episode, and I said, dude, I went to the library and I saw a podcast studio and 3D printer machines in the library for people to use. I'm like, this is insane. This is dope. This is great. So they don't have that in the libraries here in Atlanta. You have to go and get those. You have access to those things through private groups.
Yes.
Just wow.
Hold it. Now, there's one thing I do want to correct you on something. You said that it was about killing people. Planned Parenthood. No, it's about killing niggas. And when I use that word, please don't take it the wrong way. But what I'm saying is it wasn't just people they were getting, there were a specific part of society that they want to curtail. And when these eugenicists had these meetings, they said that they would get their ultimate goal not through eugenics, but through planning. That is a quote. Look that shit up. And one of the guys that was a eugenicist back then was this guy, I think his last name is Gates. His grandson is Bill Gates. And I think he's junior. So Bill Gates Jr., right? So his grandfather was part of that whole organization, his grandfather and grandmother. So do you think that Planned Parenthood changed? And do you think Bill Gates has changed? Because that's the way he was raised. And this is how we get confused, that we want to align ourselves with these powerful organizations and these powerful people because they have that B word, that billionaire by them. And you think, okay, I want to be a billionaire too. I don't want to be a billionaire. I have no desire. I wouldn't mind being a millionaire and being comfortable and being able to take care of my family. But this whole idea where people just worship money for the sake of worshiping money. Um, so have you seen this recording about one of the nannies for Elon Musk when he was 7 or 8 years
Yes, I
old?
saw that.
And she said that when she asked who was he, the other lady, not his mom, of course, but I think like the auntie or something said he's an antichrist, and you're like, no, that can't be. But then you remember the movie Omen. I hate referring. There was so much weird shit about that, and you're like, this prominent rich motherfucker, this crazy kid, and now he grows up and he's autistic, so he can't always have compassion for people. Yeah, that nigga would make a good antichrist. Let's just put it out there. So, again, this menticide is you got to brainwash yourself not to be brainwashed. You got to recognize things when they happen. You got to like have that discernment. We love to use that word discernment, but you got to recognize that some of these movements don't have your best interests at heart, but you're more worried about winning. So that's what happens with the Democrat and Republican. Black folks are Democrat and we're going to win. Look, I tell everybody whenever they ask me, well, who are you going to vote for? I'm voting for Kennedy. He's not going to win. He can't possibly win. This is a black lady telling me that I'm wasting my vote. I'm like, well, I'm not voting for Biden, and I'm damn sure not voting for Trump. At least Kennedy has sent messages and spoke about stuff and has a track record of worrying about the real health of children and people. Excuse me. And I'm like, so that's what happened. Whenever you try to have that conversation, you vote independent, you're throwing away your vote. Okay. But I know that I can sleep at night knowing that I didn't vote for them two cats, the lesser of two evils. This is the shit we're talking about, is that you literally will tote the line, tote whatever the Democratic Party or the Republican Party says is good for America or good for you, knowing that it's not good for you. That's some crazy shit, my brother. And I know you're not like that, so please forgive me. I wasn't saying it directly into anybody, but what I'm saying is that y'all can't sit here and say that somebody is a lesser of two evils. They're evil. Elon Musk might be evil. People, you got a motherfucker that watched this nigga as a kid say, yeah, that nigga's evil. And so we live in a society where if you're a billionaire, that for some reason it's okay. We're seeing the Puff Daddy in situation, and I'm not talking about it from the rap point of view. I'm talking about it from the fact. Here's the issue that people keep ignoring, so I want to throw it out there. So y'all saying that? So you got Charleston White and some of these other guys saying that a lot of that shit was consensual. That shit was consensual. That shit was consensual. The reason Cassie won that lawsuit is because she was suing him for sexual harassment. So you cannot make an employee. Jaguar said Jay-Z's worse. Jay-Z has a history of sleeping with underage girls. We know he slept with Foxy Brown, and we know he slept with Rihanna. But if Rihanna was an employee for him, but Foxy Brown was an employee, they got the right to sue that dude. And that's what these people ain't getting. We're so mixed up in the drama that we don't recognize some things that are sitting right there in front of us. And that's how this shit is, that we're so wrapped up that we don't do what's best for us. That's why I said this term menticide that you taught me is what we live in. It's a place where we live, where we reside. You can't sit here and talk about how great he is if he's doing these dastardly things.
David Bell is a distinguished psychiatrist and practicing psychoanalyst, and is a doctor who in 2018 wrote a controversial report about the activities of Gender Identity Development Service, GIDS, a clinic at the Tavistock and Portman National Health Service Foundation Trust in North London, where he worked in adult services from 1995 until retiring earlier this year. GIDS, the only clinic of its kind in England, specializes in treating children with gender identity issues, and in recent months has been in the news even more than usual. Last December, a judgment by the High Court ruled that those under the age of 16 were unlikely to be mature enough to give informed consent to the prescription of puberty blockers. Such drugs delay the development of secondary sex characteristics in patients. And this ruling is the result of a judicial review brought by a 23-year-old woman, born female. She was prescribed blockers by GIDS at 16 and now regrets her transition. She effectively curtailed medical intervention for children with gender dysphoria. The case will be heard in June. And David Bell will be technically called an intervener in the appeal, which means that he can give his evidence. But whatever the court's verdict, it cannot change the fact that the organization to which Bill devoted the greater part of his working life did not respect his rights as a whistleblower, nor has it taken the heat out of the debate about the medical treatment of trans children. If anything, the discourse has only grown more entrenched, which is why he's speaking out on this issue. Well, it's crazy because this is something that is all over the news and is being pushed, and pushed. And it seems like something that is completely inorganic. And when you look at it, you see that, oh, wait a minute, there's big money behind this. There are what you call think tanks and pharmaceutical companies. So the Tavistock Institute, as I told you, specializes in MENTACIDE. That's what they do. That's their whole spiel. That's their whole industry. Now, of course, they're nonprofit. So they get money from where? Where does their money come from? Always follow and see where the money comes from, because it'll tell you who is behind this.
Look, this is where we always get on that George Soros shit. Like whenever you have these big companies and these big movements that come out of nowhere, but they got this good funding. It's always this George Soros motherfucker. Shit like that. Black Lives Matter, George Soros. And these things are to destabilize our country. These things are to push agendas that I don't always completely agree with, but I agree with them more than I agree with this. So it must be good. No, cut that shit the fuck out. Be that individual. So, stop being brainwashed and stop giving up your identity because you want to. I want to be a part of something bigger. Sometimes you're the biggest thing that you need.
Okay, so go build a bridge. Go dig a well.
and jump off it. Look, these motherfuckers, I shouldn't say these, people get wrapped up in shit. And right now, entertainment is more important than reality. And that's what we're lending ourselves to, is to entertainment. And that's not how you fix things. You know, some things are serious. Some things are entertaining. And look, there are a lot of agendas out there going against the family. How do you procreate if everybody is living their truth and they're homosexual or they're not or whatever? They want you to stop the numbers. So they're telling you that you're not straight. They're introducing that shit to you way earlier. And so now all of a sudden they ain't got to worry about birth control. Because remember, one of the big things when it comes to New World Order is they want to get the population down to a certain level. You got Bill Gates saying that we can get those numbers down if we use that V word and something else. And I'm like, clearly he doesn't want us to grow as a population, but he wants his people to grow. You know, they're taking ovums from black women and using them in white women and all kinds of crazy stuff like that just to sit here and push his population. But he tells everybody else that there's too many people. But then he tells his people it's not enough of us. Eugenics. That's what it is. This MENTACIDE is when you sit here and support something that's not in your best interest because you've been brainwashed. This conditioning starts so early in life that you might not realize it, that you've even been conditioned. You don't know what you were like. You can't remember what you were like before you were brainwashed. So how do you fix it?
But that's the whole deal, is that it can go back so far until there's something that happens. There's an event, something even like psychedelics, which can cause a crack in that dome that has been placed over the truth. So that when this thing happens, or this slow journey towards awakening happens, then you start to see that, oh, they've been lying to us for a long time. Which is, you can hear it in people's voices when they start to learn about things like, September 11th, or the JFK assassination, or the school shootings, or the Tuskegee experiment. You can hear the excitement and passion in these people's voices because they're new to it. And I was talking to you about this the other day, about, you also have to have a firewall against bullshit, because sometimes these people that are new to this information, they're not completely informed. They haven't studied it enough. So they come at you with like half-baked things. And I'm like, all right, well, I can see you've studied well in this one area, but you have to be more well-rounded. Because then that same person will tell you, oh, well, you know, God isn't real and this. And I'm like, well, that's cool for you to say that for you, but don't go around saying that to everybody else.
No, what you're saying is deep. There people are early adopters of things. They want to be first. Remember when Denzel was talking about the media? He said, you guys have a need to be first more than to be accurate now. He said before it was about having the accurate information and being first, of course. But now you're just worried about being first, and you throw shit out there and you don't have all the details. And that's how it is. People want to be early adopters. So when they hear God has died in 1947, they jump on that shit because I want to be able to stun people and say something that's profound. And your need to be profound is because you're reciting somebody else's bullshit. You're regurgitating garbage. So instead of people reading more and searching for themselves, they cling to something that suits their needs. And that's that's the same thing when we talk about the news now. People watch the news that they want to watch. You know, they can find Fox News, they can find CNN, but they're not watching for the news. They're watching because they want to be somebody to agree with them or somebody to push what they already believe, and that's not news.
So, Terrence Howard was on Joe Rogan weeks ago, and he went on there to talk about how he had these breakthroughs and he had all these patents that he had filed, and everybody reacted to what he said in a way that was meant to ridicule him. But then you had people who would listen to it again and they started to come around and say, this guy is onto something. Or they saw the fact that he had 37 patents that had been cited by these billion-dollar tech companies. So this guy put his money where his mouth is, because to maintain patents with lawyers costs money. That's what they do not tell you, is that costs money. And this guy was putting his money where his mouth is. So forget about the fact that this guy is not classically trained as a physicist. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. This guy has still done the work. He trained himself in these topics that he is passionately pursuing, and he's presenting his evidence, and it is shocking stuff. What it does is that it fights menticide. The science that he presents is so shocking because it's so simple. He takes these concepts and he makes them very simple, but you're supposed to go through this entire gauntlet of the education system that you will be judged and scrutinized, and where no innovation comes through there because it has to be controlled so that not a gush of water comes out of the spigot, but only drops of water comes out of the spigot when it comes to innovation. And so I saw across the conspiracy community and all these supposedly enlightened people, them ridicule what he was saying without really listening to what he's saying, because he was a black man. It's because he's black. They're like, oh, there's no way you can be that smart. There's no way these things can be true. And then you saw that these tech companies cited his patents. Oh, well then he must be right. Because they're not citing these patents if it's some bullshit. They're citing these patents because they want to use that information. So, therefore, there is a form of menticide that goes into education, and it goes into tech and all these trillion-dollar industries. So, in closing, what I'm going to say is that menticide is something that is wide-reaching and vast. But you have to build up the mental fortitude. You must build up a strong will. You must have immense willpower. Work toward building immense willpower so that you can see bullshit coming to you. Man, listen, if you spend some time in the streets, you can tell when you're being hustled. You're like, nah, that bullshit ain't for me. And you just walk away.
You recognize it.
Get better at saying no. Just get better at saying no to all kinds of shit. Your first word probably was no. When you was a kid, it was like, no. Because it's so easy to say. So, go ahead.
No, I said, look, people are more worried about being popular than being correct, being intelligent, being anything else. And that's why it's so important for them to say something that's going to just stun people and shock people. And, nigga, you're not the inquirer. You're a real person, and these things really affect you. And, you know, when a lot of these organizations, a lot of these people, just because they say one thing, they have not changed their initial function. They have not changed who they are that much. They changed their message, and they changed how they talk to you, because they know that, like they said, eugenics won't work if we just use the word eugenics. We have to use planning. So when you sit here and you realize that this organization has been around as long as it has, and that it had the initial job of getting rid of a certain part of the population, you have to ask yourself, has it changed? You know, its reputation has changed, but its goal has not. And that's a real problem.
Yep. So look, build up your mind. Make your mind strong. Make your will strong.
Fortify your mind, yes.
Because they have lied to you. They have continued to lie to you. In 2020, there was a worldwide lie that was happening to people, and people just did not want to shake it. You know, it's like they say, it's easier to lie to somebody than to convince a person they have been lied to. Look, that's all I got. We out. Peace.
Holla back.